Hey, good morning. I'm talking to you today from my garage. I have a great office, but I actually prefer my garage. I don't know if there's anyone else out there like that, but if you too prefer to work in your garage at times when the weather's nice, go ahead and put that in the comments. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about math and some CMMC math in particular related to POA&Ms. I think there's a huge misunderstanding and a lot of different conversations going on out there surrounding the use of POA&Ms in the new CMMC 2.0. We don't know the exact details yet, but we know pretty much what's going to happen. So we've gotten some pretty good indicators of what to expect, and so the slides show that I'm going to give you today should cover what we expect to see in the new CMMC 2.0 when the rulemaking is complete. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've taken myself out of the picture for a minute so that we could focus on all these beautiful numbers. Let's just remember, first of all, that there are 110 controls in NIST 800-171, and let's remember that a POA&M is a plan of action and milestones used for corrective action when a control is not met. We'll talk about what a POA&M should include, some of the details, but you've really come up with your steps for remediation of the problem related to a control that's not met. There are many controls that are not eligible at all for a POA&M, and I think that's really important for OSCs to understand, because I think there's a misunderstanding about how these can be used and will be used, and the options are very limited as far as how they can be used with CMMC 2.0 certifications. So first of all, there are weights that were given to all of the controls in the past. Some are weighted with a 5, some are weighted with a 3, and others are weighted with a 1. The reason these weights were given has to do with the severity and impact of the risks that a organization is vulnerable to when they do not implement a certain control. And so some controls, if not implemented, pose a much greater risk or severity level or impact level than do other controls. It doesn't mean the other controls aren't important, but I'm just kind of explaining how they got to these weights for the given controls. So the controls, the 44 controls with a weight of 5, they're non-negotiable. They have to be met. There's never ever going to be a time that an organization can write a POA&M for those. Same thing for the 3-pointers. So they are also not allowed to have POA&M. You actually have to meet those. So I'm going to show you a list of the ones that have a weight of 5 and the ones that have a weight of 3 at the end of this slideshow. And then there's 52 controls that are left over after that, and you need to rack up another 30 controls. Those are all like weighted 1. You need to get a MET on 30 more controls to get yourself up to an 88. So that's what this equals right here. So they say you have to have 88 of the 110 controls met at least in order to write a POA&M for any controls at all. And obviously the controls that are left over are very limited because you already knocked out the important ones here, right? So there'd be 22 controls, or about 20%, that's left over that are eligible for a POA&M most of the time. There are some circumstances where they even those could not be eligible. Hopefully you wouldn't have to write a POA&M for a whole bunch of controls, and there'll probably be some rules about how many POA&Ms you can write total, but in general this is how it's going to work. And the biggest point here is that you can't just write a POA&M for anything. Okay, so now you understand what is eligible and not eligible for the POA&M option, and let's talk about that 20%, or those 22 controls that are actually eligible. Well, a few more of those could get knocked out under the following circumstances. Okay, so for that 20% that's left over, uh, it could still be that one of the controls is not eligible for one of the following reasons. And so it could be that you've already said you would fix this before in an SPRS self-evaluation. That would make you not met on 3.12.2, which has to do with POA&Ms, and the fact that you write them, and not just write them, but actually act on them and take corrective action based on that POA&M. So also, if this control is directly affecting a non-eligible control, that would be a reason it would not be eligible. Or it does not meet the criteria in Appendix K, which we don't really have access to at this point, but there could be things in there that would make a practice not eligible. If you are eligible for the plan of action and milestones on a particular control or practice, these are the things that we'll be looking for to see that you have addressed all of the important things in that plan of action. And by the way, these are coming straight from the control I mentioned earlier, 3.12.2, which discusses POA&Ms. So you'll want to identify the security weakness, you'll want to address the severity and the associated risk, address the scope of that as it pertains to the whole assessment. We have something called an assessment boundary that has to do with where the CUI is living, is being transmitted, is being shared, is being stored, is at rest. So you need to discuss that weakness as it relates to those things. Discuss mitigation approach and estimate the cost of remediation. You've got 180 days to fix those problems, and that's how long this interim level 2 certification can last. Okay, I put this in another question of the day post that I put on LinkedIn, and this is on my website as well. But a lot of people want to see those non-eligible 5-pointers. I think it's really important to take a look at this list because this is where you don't have any wiggle room. As we say in project management, this is like the critical path. There is nowhere to try to still pass the assessment if you're weak on any one of these. And so you may think you're ready for assessment, but even looking at the 5-pointers that you absolutely have to have, with SSP documentation being perfect and evidence being there for us to evaluate, this is a lot of work for a lot of companies. They're just not here yet. For other companies, they may have been practicing this for a long time, and this seems very basic. It depends on your cybersecurity maturity level, but I think what we're seeing as we interface with our OSCs or the organizations that will be seeking certification under the CMMC program is that most they think they're ready, but they're not ready because they don't understand some of the things that we're discussing in this video and just how in depth this assessment is going to be. Okay, so if you just picked any random one in here, identify system users, processes, acting on behalf of users and devices. I mean, hopefully, most organizations have something like Active Directory and everybody's logging in with a separate user account, and everybody has a separate identity, as do processes that are behaving like users in that environment or devices. So that's, that one, someone like, oh yeah, we have that. That's very basic. Again, you don't want to slip up though on any part of that. So if you have it in place very well with some processes and some devices, if those processes or devices are in the assessment boundary, meaning they have anything to do with CUI, transmitting, storing, receiving, sharing, whatever you want to say, then you need to make sure you really think about all the processes and all the devices that are going to be assessed. Okay, coming over here to monitor security controls on an ongoing basis to ensure the continued effectiveness of those controls. This is one that we often see organizations really not understanding what is meant by that wording. We need to see consistent, scheduled, assigned monitoring, meaning it's set at a certain interval as to when you're going to monitor these things. Somebody is actually, or a role has actually been assigned to this duty, and you can show that plan is actually being followed. Those are the basics. I could say a lot more about that control. But what happens is we'll walk in and they'll be like, oh yeah, we monitor that all the time, and you know, blah 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 blah. And we could look at the SSP and there's no schedule, no role, um, no guidance whatsoever on how this is going to be done. Or it is written there and we go talk to the person that you say has that role and they have no idea what we're talking about. So these are some examples of how we assess these controls.
And then here's the non-eligible 3-pointers. Same thing, there's no wiggle room on these. They have to be met fully in order to be eligible for any POA&M options if you are able to meet at least 88 total controls out of the 110. Okay, and just a little disclaimer to remind you that none of us really know for sure if things are going to change again with CMMC. We don't expect that to happen, and we've been given a lot of talk from the CMMCAB and the DoD that what we're seeing now is probably here to stay with minor tweaks. And so the information I gave you today was based on an interview that was done last Friday. Today is 6/30/2022, so that was about the 24th of June. And that interview was done with two top DoD representatives, the director of CMMC, and then also the DoD CIO and CISO. I'm going to put that link in the comments of this video. It's a great video to watch to see what the DoD is saying. So why should you send someone to the CCP course?
You could do a lot of the work yourself and get your organization, quite a ways towards being 100% complete on all the controls just by understanding what's going to be assessed and understanding the controls and what you need to do. So that's one way you could look at the CCP. A lot of people think, oh, I should just take CCP if I want to be an assessor or if I want to be a consultant. But OSC should also consider sending some representation to these classes. It will, I can assure you, save you a lot of money. All right, I hope to hear from you and have a great day. Hopefully next time I will see you in my office rather than the garage, but I can't promise.